you still want to do that real quick? I mean, that's the only one touch your touch. Okay.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Ms. Walls, do you recall on or about January the 22nd of 2015, just a week or so ago, in an interview by the state attorney's office about some statements that you might have previously given at your deposition that may not have been true? Do you remember being asked about those? And did you admit to the state that you had lied at your deposition to protect Scott?
Yes.
Essentially what you lied about was what Scott told you about what he either saw or heard over at the Greenlaws while you were gone.
Yes.
No further questions.
Mr. Will?
Was everything else in your deposition true, Ms. Walls?
Yes.
Thank you.
May we release Ms. Walls from her subpoena? Mr. Will?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Lawrence?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Ballerino?
Yes, Your Honor.
Right, Ms. Walls, I need to first advise you of a rule that the court imposes on all witnesses, and that is that you may not discuss your testimony with anyone until this trial is concluded, with the exception of these attorneys. And if you were to violate that rule, the court could conduct a criminal contempt of court hearing, which would find you guilty of such contempt to be incarcerated for 6 months. Do you understand that that is a potential for violation of that rule? Yes. You are released from your subpoena, you are free to go, and you will not be called back for further testimony in this trial.
State calls Donald Heaton.
Sorry, what was the last name?
Heaton, H-E-A-T-O-N.
You're good. Thank you.
Just step up to the podium, raise your right hand and forehead, and answer out loud, please.
You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you share in this cause to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Call me, please. Please be seated.
May inquire when ready.
Thank you. Good afternoon, sir.
Hello, sir.
Could you tell us your name?
Sergeant Donald C. Eaton,
And for which agency are you a sergeant?
the Volusia County Sheriff's Office.
How long have you been so employed?
Oh, for going on my 18th year right now.
And give us some idea of what it is that a sergeant within the Volusia County Sheriff's Office does.
Well, there's many facets in the Sheriff's Office. We're supervisors first and foremost. Currently, I work in the civil section dealing with civil process.
Like the service of subpoenas, that kind of thing.
Yes, sir.
Was there a time back in October, specifically the 28th, 29th of 2011, that you worked as a sergeant in a different capacity, maybe as a shift supervisor?
Yes, sir, I did. I was in road patrol
Okay.
in District 3, which is the Ormond Beach area, designated as 1 Delta 30. I was the supervisor in charge of Delta shift.
And what is the Delta shift?
There's 4 shifts, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and my shift was Delta shift. We were on a rotation from 6 at night till 6 in the morning.
So you would have been coming off a shift about 6 in the morning on the 29th?
Yes, sir.
What were your responsibilities as a road patrol sergeant and shift supervisor on that day?
Guidance and overseeing of my troops, the answering of calls for service, responding to emergency calls for service, and making sure that my deputies were doing what they were tasked to do throughout their daily duties.
Tell us how it is that a shift change occurs within the sheriff's office. There was one at 6, you said.
Typically, yeah, the average day when we change shifts, we are in the district office at about 5:45, and we're briefing an oncoming shift, letting them know what had taken place the night prior while we were working, and what to expect or possibly to be expecting when they come on shift.
At this particular time, where was the district office where you would have been giving such a briefing?
It was located at 3rd Avenue and Nova Road in Holly Hill.
Right there by the car dealerships?
Yes, sir.
How big is the area for which you were the shift supervisor and supervising deputy?
It went from Bevel Road and US 1 north all the way to the county line.
And how
From the ocean front, there were portions that we would work on the ocean front all the way west to about the high power lines. That's the best description I can give you.
the ones on 92 that are about halfway between Delaney
Here
and
in
Arizona?
Atlanta. Yes, sir.
That's a large area.
Yes, sir, it is.
How many deputies typically work in that area?
For the sheriff's office in District 3 on any given shift, we had myself, 31, 32, 34, and 35. So me and 5 deputies.
To cover all that area.
Yes, sir.
If you had received a call at 13 Aspen at any time during the shift, what was the typical response time to that area on a given day?
Well, given the time that we work from 6 at night till 6 in the morning, it could be anywhere from 4-minute response time to a 7-8 minute response time.
So on any given day, it could be anywhere from 4 minutes to 7 or 8 minutes to get from wherever you are in that zone out to the Aspen address.
Running emergency code, yes.
And what's an emergency code?
Lights and siren.
Is that something that you do when typically shots are fired?
Yes, sir.
And how many people would respond on a shots fired call?
Anybody that was not currently on a call.
So anybody that isn't already dealing with something else, they go to that call.
Yes, sir.
And that's a typical day, typical time, any time during your shift.
Yes, sir.
How does that change when shift change is happening?
Typically, when we're all sitting in the district office, it may take a couple minutes more for us to respond because of time to get to your car, to get in, get out in traffic, and start making our way through the city areas to get onto the main arteries to get to where we need to go.
And I think you told us that shift change typically occurs around 6, but that everybody starts getting to the district office around 5:45.
Yes, sir.
So around 5:30, they'd be en route, but not necessarily there.
Correct.
Still out in the zone somewhere, but en route to the central part of the district.
Yes, sir.
On October 29th of 2011, you received a call of shots fired out at 13 Aspen. Did you not?
Yes, sir, we did.
People were on their way back to the district in order to conduct that briefing that you talked about.
Yes, sir, they were.
People were already thinking about heading home and back to their families and their loved ones.
Yes, sir.
What was the response when the call came in? What did law enforcement do when the call was received?
Well, when we received the call, units immediately started to key up on the radio and explain to Central that we were going to be en route, we're 51 that way. And at that time, I believe I had 3 units responding immediately, and there were 2 units at the branch jail, which is right down the street from where the call actually came out.
Okay.
And they were listening to the radio, and they keyed up also and said that they would be en route, along with my patrol deputies from District 3.
And I think in the call summary, we can see that the patrol deputies are coming from the area of LPGA and 95, isn't that right?
Yes, some of them were.
And so that's, several miles to the north and a couple miles to the east.
Yes, sir.
How long did it take for deputies to arrive on scene that morning after the call that shots were fired had gone out over the radio?
I'm going to refer to my call
Sure,
history.
and tell us too what time the call was, what time the call came in.
Looking at the call history, the call was generated or created through Central at 5:36 hours in the morning. And we began heading that way immediately at 5:37 and 10 seconds. First units to arrive on scene, from what I'm seeing through the call history, was at 5:47 and 42 seconds, which is roughly
10 minutes after you
10, yes,
respond, we're on the way, and 11 minutes after the call was initiated.
yes, sir.
And I think you told us that usually it's 6 to 8 minutes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we're in the 10, 11 minute range on this one.
Yes, sir.
What was the first action taken by law enforcement as they arrived to the scene that morning?
Let me put it this way, when I arrived at Roosevelt in the area of Aspen, Central had already informed us that there was possibly a green pickup truck leaving the area that may have been involved in the incident.
Okay. And what's your response to your guys as you're on the way?
I'm telling them to look for the green vehicle, and if we get the green vehicle or find it, to conduct a felony stop on that vehicle because shots were fired.
Are you getting real-time information from dispatch?
As real as, yes, they're getting it to them, and then they're giving it to us immediately. However, there is a short delay at times with the information that's flown because they're talking to individuals on the phone.
So dispatch is on the phone with the 911 caller, passing it on to you. And
Well,
it's,
it goes to a 911 caller who then gives it to dispatch.
okay.
A dispatcher then is entering it in the computer and radioing us, letting us know that information.
And the first information that you received after the shots were fired is that there may be a green vehicle fleeing the area and that you need to pay attention, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What response did law enforcement take upon getting to the scene 10 minutes after the call?
As I was pulling onto Roosevelt, my deputies already had the green Ford Ranger pickup truck stopped. And we were in the midst of conducting our felony stop and removing the two individuals from the green pickup truck.
What's a felony stop?
A felony stop is any time that we have a forcible felony, shots fired, individuals that possibly may be injured in this case where it's a felony case. We will conduct it's a safety stop basically for the law enforcement officers. We do it in force with more than one deputy, and we take them out tactically at gunpoint and get them on the ground, secure them, make sure they have no weapons, and then we secure them into vehicles.
And this takes time, right?
Yes, sir, it does.
It's a dangerous situation. You guys take precautions when you're handling people in this kind of a call.
Yes, sir, and one of the other reasons why we did that is because as we're responding, not only did Central tell us that this green pickup may be involved, but Central was also informing us that they believed two people had been shot. So now, not only do we have the gunfire going off, but now we have human life in jeopardy or in peril. And we, of course, are going to become safety-minded and tactical sound, so we don't get shot and killed.
And there's always the possibility that your shooter's in the vehicle, right?
Yes, sir.
As you approach the area, do you have to clear and make sure that your shooter is not in the vehicle?
Yes, sir.
After you've done that and you've secured the two people that are in the vehicle, what do you do next?
Being that we were down the street from 9 Aspen, I took 2 other deputies and myself, all armed with M4 carbines, and
What's that?
they are assault rifles,
Okay.
tactical assault rifles that we are issued.
Okay.
And we started moving down Aspen Street tactically with our weapons.
What's that mean? What's that look like? If I'm sitting in the house, what am I going to see as you move tactically down the street?
Hopefully you're not going to see a bunch of us because we're going to be taking cover every chance we can. We're going to be moving very slowly. We're going to be taking areas of cover and concealment so we can see what's going on down the street, but they really can't see us coming.
Okay.
Okay? Reason for that is we don't want anybody with a assault rifle or high-powered rifle being able to shoot at us while we're coming down to get in range. We want to get in range in case we do get engaged. We can return fire and hopefully save ourselves.
And at this time, are you still receiving information over the 911 call through dispatch as to what's going on scene?
Yes, sir, over my portable mic radio.
Okay. And tell us how you proceed down Aspen, please.
As myself, Deputy Brahman is to the left of me, and I have Deputy Seltzer to the right of me. I'm coming down the street, and I am taking cover behind vehicles that were in the street, while Deputy Brahman is moving through the front yards of the houses on Aspen Street, seeking whatever cover he can seek as we're moving down in a straight line. We're trying to stay across from each other, and we have what are called interlocking fields of fire. I have one deputy aiming sort of at an angle to the right of him, another deputy aiming to the left of him, and I'm taking whatever's coming down the center. That way, if we do encounter hostile forces, we can repel our borders.
And you don't shoot each other.
And we do not, yes, we have clear fields of fire.
And so you clear essentially house to house, car to car, all the way down the street until you get to number 9.
Just outside, yes.
When you get to number 9, can you observe the defendants as you're approaching?
We were back probably a house or two, and we saw movement out in front of what we believe to be 9 Aspen. And I informed Deputy Brahman to light up the scene, basically, with his flashlight, his tactical light that was on the end of his carbine, his rifle. He did so, and when he did, we saw 2 defendants in the front yard. Well, I say defendants, we saw 2 individuals in the front yard.
Later they became the defendants, right?
Yes, sir.
And in fact, you recognize both those individuals here today.
Yes, sir.
And so, when you first see them, what are the Greenlaw brothers doing?
May I refer back to my my notes, my deposition?
Absolutely.
They were outside. What I said in my deposition was we observed the 2 males standing outside the garage of 9 Aspen.
Were they still smoking at that time, or do you even remember?
I believe one may have been smoking, but I don't recall definitely if they were smoking.
Probably not an important detail to you.
Not to me. I was worried about firearms.
As you come up to them, how does it go? Walk us through the process.
Once we identified the house as being number 9 and Central telling us that the shots were coming from number 9, I start giving commands to both of the males in the front yard to get down on the ground. There's one male sort of in the front yard, but not right next to the garage, and there's another male more towards the garage area. Both males complied with my orders, and I had both Deputy Brahman and Deputy Seltzer adjust their angles of fire or fields of fire to cover the 2 individuals that were now on the ground in a prone position, because we still don't know whether or not they had firearms at that point in time. And I began to move up, and once I got up there, I safetied my weapon and I handcuffed the first individual that was away from the garage in the front yard.
Do you remember that he said something about be careful, I have a bad back?
Yes, I believe him saying that, please don't shoot me, be careful, I have a bad back, or don't hurt me, I have a bad back. I basically said, shut up, put your hands behind your back, and I then handcuffed him. And once I had him secure, we moved to the next male that was in front of the garage and handcuffed him.
And at some point, there was a pat down of those 2 individuals to make sure that there were no weapons on them.
Yes, after a while there was, yes.
Right. Before we get to the pat down, though, take us through the rest of the equation. What happens after you have the 2 defendants secure?
Once we had the 2 defendants secured, I instructed Deputy Brahman to stay there as a security deputy for those 2 individuals, because of course we don't want them getting up, moving, and run away or anything else. And as a safety precaution, in case there were anybody else inside 9 Aspen, he would then be able to encounter any threat that might come from the house. I took Deputy Seltzer and myself, now back with my tactical rifle, and we moved down to 13 Aspen, where we were told there was a gunshot victim. Deputy Seltzer and I tactically moved down the street towards 13 Aspen, where he's on the, I guess you could say, north side of the roadway, and I'm along the street where the cars may have been parked in the driveways of the other houses that are right there.
As you move down the street, are you paying any attention to the evidence that's scattered about?
The only thing I recall seeing were rifle rounds, what I believe were rifle rounds and casings, empty shell casings.
But not really specifically where or how
No.
many or? Again,
I
not
wasn't
your
trying
job.
to focus on that. I mean, I could see it, but I wasn't focused on that. I was still worried about whether or not there were any more gunmen. And I'm kicking into rendering aid because I'm told that there's a gunshot with victim. And if we can render aid, that's what we're supposed to do as law enforcement officers, is render that aid.
Right, and do you make such an attempt?
As we start moving, and I can see in the carport of 13 Aspen, I see a male laying on the ground. Couldn't really tell what was around him or anything else at that point in time. I had Deputy Seltzer take up a position so he could cover the door leading from the house into the carport for a field of fire as I moved up along the side of the carport in an attempt to check the individual that was laying on the ground.
Okay. And once you made such an attempt to check the individual laying on the ground, what did you find?
As I was approaching, I could clearly see that he was laying in a pool of blood, and there was a 12-gauge shotgun, I believe, positioned near his head. I leaned over, I felt for a pulse, and when I didn't find a pulse, I began to back out of the carport.
Before you move on to what happened next, I'm going to show you some photographs.
Okay.
I'll show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 6 for identification. Just 1 second. Enable these. Is this the house that you went to for the victim that had been shot? Proceeding down Aspen to the red driveway and up the driveway into the carport?
Yes, it is.
I think that you said that you found the victim laying in the back of the carport there by the door into the house.
Yes, sir.
I'll show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit N for identification purposes. Do you recognize those photographs, sir?
Yes, sir.
Do they fairly accurately depict the scene as you saw it that morning?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Aside from the orange rods here, everything else was exactly the same?
Yes, sir.
Judge, if there are no objections at this point, state will move into identification, or into evidence that stays next.
Mr. Lawrence?
No objection.
Mr. Valerino?
No objection, Your Honor.
Be admitted as State's Exhibit number 13.
And everything here in these photographs is exactly how you saw them on that particular morning.
That I recall, yes,
As
sir.
you recall, right. As you start to back out, you told us you checked the victim and you start to back out. Did you get all the way out of the carport?
No, sir.
Why not?
As I'm starting to back out, I look up and there were faces in the carport door window that I immediately, sorry about that I immediately came up on point because I didn't know whether or not they were hostile or what have you.
On point, you mean you raised your
Oh
right?
yeah, I had my rifle and I was gunpoint on them in case I had to engage. Again, officer safety, I was going home that day.
Yeah.
I started to back out of the carport. Once I observed them, I began to tell them, come out, and they came outside and they began telling me, there's another guy in my house, I think he's dying.
Before you go into the house, let's talk about what happened with the people that you took out of the house. Did they proceed through the carport door?
Yes, they came out the carport door.
Were they monitored by you the entire time?
Yes, sir.
Did they appear frightened?
Yes, sir.
After you got them out the carport door, what did you do?
We moved them out of the carport entirely to, I want to say it was the west side of the carport, so they weren't kicking anything or moving anything around where our deceased was laying. And I took them outside the carport area and Deputy Seltzer called them over to him.
Okay, and then they were escorted from the entire crime scene perimeter, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Is that a concern when you escort people from the area? You said that you took them away from where the victim was laying because you didn't want them to kick or move anything. Is that a concern for responding law enforcement in the situation you've addressed with us?
Well, at this point in time, I have a crime. I want to preserve as much evidence as possible. I don't want it kicked, touched, moved, or anything else. So therefore, we did the best we could to pull these folks out without disturbing the scene and move them to an area of safety. Because now I have the information that I've got a person dying inside this house, possibly. I have to now clear this residence. Well, I have no other people with me, so now I've got to be tactically thinking on my own and how I'm going to clear this residence by myself. Unknown if there's any other gunmen or anything else inside the residence.
And so what do you do to clear the residence?
I safetied my rifle and I put that behind my back. I slung it behind my back and I drew my sidearm and I entered the residence. As I went through the carport door, I made an immediate left, and that's when I observed the other individual who was sitting on the floor, I believe in the kitchen up against a bar, and he was sort of holding his arm, and I could see that there was blood everywhere. And he just kept telling me, help me, help me. And I tried to reassure him that everything was going to be okay. And if I recall correctly, I grabbed a towel from the bar and wrapped his arm in this towel and tried to cinch it down tight. And then I got on my radio and I called Central and told them that I needed evac to respond, that I had one deceased and one severely injured.
And at that point, evac comes, collects Justin Riley, takes him to the hospital.
I believe that's where they took him, yes, sir.
Did Justin Riley have any opportunity to touch anything else within the crime scene after you were with him?
No, sir.
Was he escorted out of the crime scene in a similar fashion as to that described by the other three individuals?
If I recall correctly, he was put on a gurney by evac and taken out on a gurney.
Okay.
So he didn't even move under his own power.
Okay. Did evac touch anything within the crime scene?
Not that I saw.
That's not the end of your duties and function, though, on this particular street that morning.
No, sir.
Tell us what you did after you got Justin Riley en route to the hospital.
I'm going to refer back to my...
Please do.
Once we got Justin out of the residence, I did a scan of the residence from where I was at to see if there was anybody else in the residence, and then I began to back out.
Okay.
After I backed out of the residence, it was that time that other supporting units were starting to show up. Another sergeant had arrived on scene. Who was
On scene where? I know that the scene originally started all the way out at the green truck.
Yeah.
Is that where responding units continued to arrive?
No, they actually came past the green truck and all the way down to 9 Aspen. And my relieving sergeant, the sergeant who was coming on duty that morning, who was Thomas Tatum, Sergeant Tom Tatum, he come walking down the street towards 13 Aspen as I was coming out.
Okay.
From that point, I was basically telling Tom what we had encountered and what was going on.
And Tom would have been the next sergeant on shift at 6 a.m.
Yes, sir.
So shift change is taking place out in the street at Aspen.
Yes, sir. We're doing our shift change in the midst of the chaos, basically.
Okay.
As I'm talking to Tom and letting him know what's going on, I then go back to Deputy Brahman, and there was another deputy on scene. I can't recall what his name was, but they took the brothers, Greenlaw brothers, and separated them and put them in 2 separate cars. Okay? John Brahman and I then were going to clear 9 Aspen, because he had been sitting on 9 Aspen. So He didn't see anybody at that time, but we didn't know if there was anybody else in there. We were gonna go in and check out 9 Aspen.
Right, again, to dispel the threat.
Yes, sir.
Tell us what you did.
John Brahman and I went in with our rifles slung and our handguns out and began moving through 9 Aspen down a small hallway till we came to the bedroom, I believe was on the northeast side of the residence. I'm not exactly sure,
Okay.
but I think it was the northeast side of the residence. And when we entered that room, we saw rifle, ammunition, handgun, magazines, and ammunition laying on the bed. There was a handgun, referring back to my deposition, that was semi-automatic. Believed it was a 9mm. Hammer was cocked to the rear. Magazine was inserted, ready to be fired. Laying on the bed with other magazines of ammunition.
I'll show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit I for identification. Recognize these photographs in this?
Yes, sir.
Is that what it looked like that morning when you got there?
Yes, sir.
These are the handguns and the rifle and the ammunition that you just described, correct?
Yes, sir.
No objections, state was moved. State's Exhibit I and O is State's next.
Mr. Ryan?
No objection.
Mr. Allen?
No objection.
The amended State's Exhibit number 14.
Sergeant, talk with me real quick. That's right. Talk with me real quick of the blue things that we're seeing here in both photographs. Those are the sheets in the corner of the bed.
Yes, sir. I believe there were sheets on the mattress of the bed.
Okay, and then we've got a comforter that's kind of a multicolored thing.
Yes, sir.
And then the orange thing here is a jacket that's laying up on the bed.
Yes, I believe that's what that is.
These are the weapons that you previously referred to.
Yes, sir.
As you continue to clear the house, you eventually encounter an elderly woman in the house.
No, sir, we did not.
Do you know where she was at that time?
I don't recall where she was, but I believe there may have been a locked bedroom door that we did not force open at the time. She may have been in that room.
Do you remember that there were bottles of alcohol and beer bottles scattered across the tables and in the trash cans?
Vaguely. I wasn't really paying attention to that.
Again, your job is to clear the residence, look for threats, and move through, right?
Yes, sir.
Not the collection of evidence.
No, sir. Preserve if we can. Collection, no, sir.
At some point, you exit the home, right?
Yes, sir.
And then you've essentially completed your search function. You're satisfied that there are no more threats within the crime scene.
Yes, sir.
At what point were the defendants patted down for weapons or contraband on them?
Just before they were put into the rear of 2 separate patrol vehicles, to my knowledge.
You weren't involved in that.
No, sir, I was not.
You didn't in fact pat them down.
No, sir, I did not.
But that is the protocol of the Volusia County Sheriff's Office. Before anybody get into the patrol car, they be patted and searched.
Yes, sir. Anybody that's placed in handcuffs that's to go in the rear of our patrol vehicles are to be pat searched prior to entry.
And if contraband weapons or ammunition were found upon them, you had no role in the recovery of those items.
Correct.
After you've cleared the area of threats, secured all relevant parties, transported one of the victims to the hospital, do you have any additional role in the resolution of this scene?
The only thing that I did besides that was to have deputies blockade or rope off the scene with crime scene tape.
And so that's when the yellow tape starts coming out.
Yes, sir.
Some patrol vehicles have moved up and down the street during this time, but you guys get it out as quickly as you can.
Yes, sir.
Okay. questions.
Thank you, sir.
Examination by counsel for Wayne Greenlaw.
Good afternoon, Sergeant.
Good afternoon, sir.
Sergeant, you were dispatched at 5:37 and .10 seconds, correct?
No, sir, 5:36 and 36 seconds.
Okay, that's when the 911.
That's when it was created. Yes, sir, I'm
Created,
sorry.
5:36, 36, and then you were dispatched at 5:37:10.
Yes, sir.
And did you arrive at 5:47:42, or was that other units who arrived?
Well, if I may refer.
Yes, please.
What I'm showing you in my call history is at 5:47 and 52 seconds, myself, 1 Delta 30, and 1 Charlie 34, who was the oncoming shift, arrived on scene at Roosevelt and Aspen, where the green pickup truck was stopped.
So when you arrived on scene, a felony stop already had occurred with that green pickup truck,
No, sir.
or you conducted that felony stop?
I told the deputies to conduct that felony stop, yes.
With that, those other deputies that were there, were they the deputies that were at the county jail in relatively close proximity to Roosevelt and Aspen?
They may have been, I don't recall specifically.
Do you recall anything about the occupants of this green pickup truck?
2 males.
Did you have any contact with them?
No, sir.
You didn't pull them out of the truck, you didn't handcuff them, you didn't talk to them?
No, sir, besides giving orders, telling them to get out of the truck, hold their hands outside the truck, where they were then taken out and handcuffed and placed in 2 separate vehicles.
While you're at this location with the felony stop of this green truck, were there any other vehicles that were stopped by you or other deputies that you observed?
There was a large white, I want to say it was either a Ford or a Dodge with jacked up 4-wheel drive.
And where did that vehicle come from? Did that come from Aspen or Roosevelt?
No, that came from the street just north of Aspen. I don't recall what the name of that street is.
And that was coming down Roosevelt towards 92?
No, these 2 streets parallel each other. There's Aspen that runs into Roosevelt, and then the street that's just north of Aspen, which I cannot recall the name of that right now. The white truck was parked at that intersection, just north of Aspen and Roosevelt. So whatever that street name is, and Roosevelt is where it was stopped.
So after the felony stop on this green pickup truck, you along with 2 other deputies start your tactical crawl, for better phrase, down Aspen. You're clearing your fields of fire as you go to make sure there's no suspects or threats, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, you mentioned that you had a tactical light on your assault weapon.
The 2 deputies did, I did not. Mine was inoperative at the time.
Now, is one of the purposes of a tactical light on an assault weapon is to help identify potential threats, potential suspects, potential hostile forces?
Yes.
So when you ordered your other deputies to turn on their lights, you did that when you saw 2 figures at 9 Aspen.
Yes. What we believe to be 9 Aspen.
And again, the purpose of turning on those lights was to assist the deputies in seeing if these gentlemen were armed or were a threat.
Yes, sir.
And they weren't armed and they were not a threat at this point.
Not that we can see.
And they complied
I
with
shouldn't say not in their hands.
Not in their hands, okay.
Yes.
Nothing that was seen through a tactical light at the end of an assault rifle.
No, sir.
They complied with your commands to get on the ground in a prone position?
Yes, sir, they did.
When you first encountered them, were they being evasive? Were they trying to conceal themselves or run away when they saw law enforcement approach?
No, sir, they did not.
And you said previously in your deposition that they never made any statements about the incident.
Not the incident.
Besides the statements that you already said today about having a bad back and...
Yes, don't shoot me.
Okay. All right, so after those 2 individuals are secured, you proceed down to 13 Aspen.
Yes, sir. Leaving one of my deputies with them.
Now, as you're going down 13 Aspen, is there any other vehicles traveling on Aspen at all?
No, sir.
At the
Not
same-
that I recall.
At the same time that you're going down Aspen, heading west, Are there any other law enforcement officers converging on number 13 Aspen from the west heading east?
No, sir.
So you're literally the point man yourself.
Myself and Deputy Seltzer.
So the two of you are heading in there, you're the only ones.
Yes, sir.
Now, what time do you get into the carport at 13 Aspen and notice an individual on the ground?
I can't give you an exact time. I can refer to my call history, but I don't believe it's going to give me an exact time until I call for evac after I've cleared that scene and went inside the house. I then call for evac. That's probably what was, if you don't mind, I'll refer to this.
Let me ask you another question that may help.
Okay.
Do you have a time on when the two individuals at 9 Aspen were secured?
If you don't mind, I will
Sure,
refer
please.
back to my call history and see if we called that out.
Yes.
Okay, what I'm looking at in my call history is at 5:55 and 34 seconds. I believe Central tells us that there are two males in front of the house, unknown if they have any signal zeros. Signal zero is firearm.
Okay.
At 5:55, 47 seconds, it says 3 secured now, we'll try to move towards the house. And I believe what we're talking about there is when we moved from 9 Aspen to 13 Aspen, when I called there are 3 secured now, are the 3 that we pulled out of 13 Aspen.
So the three that the closest time we have to you arriving at 13 Aspen was when you pulled 3 individuals out of 13 Aspen.
Right, which would be 5:55 and 47 seconds.
So when you pull them out of 13 Aspen, Your Honor, may I approach the witness? Your Honor, may I question the witness from here? I'm sorry, when you pulled the 3 individuals out of 13 Aspen and you took them to the west, correct?
I believe that's which way we went.
Well, you sent them to 15 Aspen, would that be, which would be west over here?
What I believe we did was when we brought them out, I meant we took them to the west of the carport, and I didn't finish that because I believe they were in the front yard after the fact. After we got them out of the house and out of the carport, I believe they were moved to the front yard. However, they could have been moved toward 15 Aspen.
So either they were moved from the carport to the front yard here, and then subsequently moved over to 13 or 15 Aspen.
It would have either been to 15 Aspen first, and then to the front yard, or they could have stayed. I can't remember so long ago.
Well, when you were escorting them, and now are you walking backwards and having them follow you?
No, I was giving them direction from a point where I could keep cover with my rifle and telling them which way to move.
Well, do you recall what point you were at when you were giving them directions?
No, sir, I cannot.
You're giving them directions to exit 13 Aspen. Are they going out the carport in front of this vehicle or down and then in the back of this vehicle?
Is there any way we can bring up the other picture with the subject lying in the carport? Because it would be easier to see.
Okay, Sergeant, does this help your recollection on where you were in giving these 3 individuals instructions on how to exit 13 Aspen?
Yes. And what we had to do, may I rise, Your Honor? if I recall correctly, and it's, again, been a long time, this is the door that they were inside of. And as you can see, there's a window that covers the entire door. As they came out, we went this way and then down this side.
Out of the car.
Out of the carport, yeah, which would have brought us alongside of this car, out the front and alongside of that car. Because Deputy Seltzer was out here.
Okay, very good. Did these three individuals make any statements to you on what about the incident?
Not about the incident to me. They just said, there's a guy inside my house, we think he's dying.
After these three individuals were secured, you said you went back down to number 9 Aspen.
Yes, sir.
When you went back down to number 9 Aspen, you were clearing that house. You did not encounter an elderly woman?
Not that I recall, sir.
Was that house already fully cleared by the time you got back there?
No, sir. Deputy Brawman was instructed not to go in the house, but to cover the front of the house.
And when you went back there, you just mentioned something about a locked bedroom door?
We believe that there was, if I recall correctly, it was the southeast bedroom door that was locked.
And did you knock on it? Did you have anything to do with this locked bedroom door? Did you try to gain entry?
No, I did not.
Do you know if anyone subsequently came out of that bedroom door?
Not while I was in the residence.
Do you know of any other law enforcement officer who went into that bedroom?
No, sir, I cannot.